invite you to prepare for a time of meditation. There is peace. There is quiet when we touch the stillness. There is love. There is healing when we touch the stillness. There is hope that is growing when we touch the stillness. May you rest, may it flow, breathing in, letting go. In the stillness, there is peace, there is quiet when we touch the stillness. And so if you haven't already done so, I invite you to close your eyes, if that feels comfortable for you. And breathe easily. You don't have to control your breath or breathe in any different way. Just sometimes it helps to follow the breath, to pay attention to your breath so that it takes your mind off of all of the thoughts that are running through. Allow the light of God to flow into you and through you. There's light in this room, but you can also use the power of your imagination to believe that there's a light from above coming to you. That light is like sunshine. It's freely given. It's continuous. It's eternal. That light shines upon you, on your face, and warms you. That light has spiritual properties, and it moves in through the top of your head, moves through you, touches every cell, every atom, every fiber of your being. And that light enlivens you. It refreshes you. It burns away any thoughts that are negative. It has the power to heal every cell in your body. That light has the power to remind you that you are not your body. You are more than a body. You are spirit expressing. There is some of God within you, some of God within everyone. It's only that we have varying degrees of awareness about that. And so those who are fully aware, fully awake, as was Jesus, as was the Buddha, as have been many other teachers, they become one with that light. And they say, I am the light of the world. Because they know that light is energy, and we are all energy. We are all the energy of spirit. And so we sit together now in that energy of spirit, in that light, letting it flow through us, opening up to receiving it fully, saying, here I am. At some point, at some place, in some time, I said yes to this human experience. Here I am. And to live it fully, I now open to my divine nature. I now open to the voice for spirit speaking in my heart and in my mind. In these next few moments in the silence, you will quiet your thoughts. Just tell it, peace, be still. If any thoughts come in that intrude, if you start wandering in your mind, just say peace, be still. And focus on that light that is pouring through you, that light of which you are made, that light of God, truly the light of the world. And so for these next few moments, we will be the light in the silence. Let us take another breath together now. And as we release the breath, we let go. We let go of all concerns. We just know that that light is flowing in us, through us, and as us now. And we give thanks. We give thanks for this knowing and for being able to be a part of the rising and the evolving of human consciousness in this world. May we all recognize the Christ in each other. Some say, Namaste. The Christ in me beholds, honors, cherishes, and adores the Christ in you. Thank you, Infinite Spirit. May we stay in this space. May we stay in this peace. May we remember that we are the light of the world. And so it is. Amen. May you rest, may it flow, breathing in, letting go, in the stillness. There is peace, there is quiet when we touch the stillness. You breathe out, I breathe in. We're sharing molecules again. Oxygen and hydrogen, but do you know where your atoms have been? Parts of me were once in you. Genghis Khan and Hitler too. Jesus Christ and dinosaurs. Princess Di and dinosaur. All the atoms everywhere circle back so we can share. No escaping, yes, it's true. Parts of me were once in you. My whole body, smooth and hairy, is really very temporary. Every year a new epidermis. Maybe next year's will be firmer. There's some atom somewhere in Spain I could use back in my brain. They stay a while and then they leave. They only fit what we can see. All the atoms everywhere circle back so we can share. Like some ever-changing brew, parts of me are now in you. As hard as it might seem to be, parts of you were once a tree, once a fish in the primal soup. Something's dinner, something's goop. 15 billion years ago, the Big Bang was quite a show. All this time and now here we are, but parts of you were once a star. All the atoms everywhere circle back so we can share. No escaping, yes, it's true. Parts of me were once in you. The atoms here on earth get recycled, death to birth. Like some ever-changing brew, parts of me are now in you. All these atoms we've collected only mean that we're connected. Since we share what we're made of, don't you think that calls for love? Thank you. This is Catherine, and that is Tony, and that is Brenda, and that is Joy. You guys are all right. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. How many of you know what those words at the beginning are? Star Wars. Star Wars. You may recognize that's the crawl line that the movie started with. And it scrolled up and they got smaller and smaller, so you had to read it fast, you know? And if you were a slow reader, you just had to rewind it and watch it again. That was the backstory, though. It told the story behind that epic drama. That epic drama that was the story of humankind's best nature, highest nature, versus humankind's lowest nature. And you know, that was an amazing series. It ended up being 9 movies altogether. And I haven't seen them all, but I saw Star Wars. And one of the things you watch when you want to know when you're first watching Star Wars is, are the good guys going to win? Are the good guys going to win? Because it seems like maybe they won't at some point. long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And then, of course, there's the once upon a time. Once upon a time, and then there's all the stories that follow after that. We all love a good story. We love to hear good stories. We love to tell good stories. We love to sit around a campfire and tell stories, all kinds of spooky and scary stories, and stories of our lives. We love to share stories. How many of you sit at the kitchen table and tell stories? You know, there's that kitchen table experience. Before the written word, before we started having books to tell stories, humankind back in the day told their history, they taught their values, everything that they knew, that they wanted to pass on to another generation. It was told in stories. The first 5 books of the Old Testament are the stories of the Hebrew people. Wasn't necessarily meant to be taken as a guideline for how we should live our lives 5,000 years later, but some people take it that way, and that's okay. Some people have chosen a different story. We love to hear stories. We put them to music and we call them ballads. We call them folk songs. Got some good country songs that are, all about how my dog left me and, all that good stuff. Those are stories. We teach our children with our stories. How many of you read to your kids when they were little? Berenstain Bears stories were what I read to my daughter. They always contain good messages. They teach our children values. We tell stories to answer humankind's unanswerable questions. If we don't know the answer, we get together and we make something up. And that becomes a story that goes on, and it becomes a truth. That's just humankind, the human brain is hardwired for stories. We remember things better when it's told in story. Stories is just part of what we are and who we are. And they have such power to shape our lives. Stories have incredible power. Individually, the stories that you've heard and told shape your life. As a culture, different cultures have different stories. Different religions have different stories. Generation after generation, stories influence our lives and have power. So why is that? Part of the reason I believe is because they're told to us by the knowers in our lives, the people that teach us, and we're supposed to, we believe what they say because they're the wise ones. And so we give them special authority. There's another thing, is that the stories that we hear generally fit with our belief system. And because they fit with our belief system, we just don't question them. We listen to them, we hear them, we take them and say yes. And then there's the thing called cognitive dissonance, which is once you've heard a story, once you believe it, once you take it as your truth, you don't like to give it up because it's hard to admit that you've been wrong. Psychologists have done a lot of study about this. So even in the face of contradictory evidence, people hold on to their stories because it's hard to admit that you don't know what you were talking about. It really is. Don't confuse me with the facts. I have my story. Psychologists know that once we believe a story, it shapes our perceptions. In other words, we actually filter out any information that does not support the story that we believe. That's why 2 different people can see, or 10 different people can see the same exact thing and take something different away from it, because your brain is only letting in what fits with what you believe. Isn't that amazing? I mean, that's how powerful our stories are. They can shape what we think is true, whether we know it or not. So humankind collectively tells stories about death, about eternal life, about reincarnation, about time, about lack, about limitation, about truth, about religion, about suffering, about right and wrong, about enlightenment, about strength, weakness, power, everything. We've got a story for everything. We just hold on to our stories. We even have stories about how the physical universe started, which we have no idea, frankly. We have no idea, but we've got stories about it. And we've got stories about how the physical universe operates. We've got stories for everything. Now, here's a story that you've heard. People tell the story that life happens to you. And there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to suck it up. Bad things happen to good people, and there's no explanation. Or if there is an explanation, it's because you made God mad. That's a story most of us have heard. That's an Old Testament story from 5,000 years ago. And yet many of us still believe that story. There's a different story I want to tell. It's the story that Charles Fillmore taught. Charles Fillmore was co-founder of Unity. And he came up with some words that kind of held his story together. And it said, thoughts in mind produce after their own kind. Thoughts in mind produce after their own kind. In other words, life doesn't just happen to you. Your thoughts have something to do with the life that you live. Whatever you're thinking, more thoughts like that will pop into your mind because of the law of attraction. That law of attraction, that which is like unto itself is drawn. So if I'm waking up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m., and I'm having, the first thing that pops into my mind is all my problems. The longer I lay there and do that, the more problems I will think of. The more thoughts, the scareder I'll get, it spirals downward. Does this happen to any of you? Some of you? Have any of you found a cure for that? We'll talk after. There is a cure for that. And the reverse is also true. If you are having a good time and you're feeling good, the thoughts that you're having are high vibration, you're really having a good time, and you have more and more and more and more thoughts like that. It just spirals upward just as easily as it does downward. Thoughts in mind produce after their own kind. That is an inspired idea. And it used to be that it was a really different idea, but now more and more people are telling that story. More and more people are getting it. Esther and Jerry Hicks, if you're familiar with them and the teachings of Abraham. You know, Abraham, they've been around for like 50 years now. Esther has been channeling this entity named Abraham. And what I have found is there's nothing inconsistent in what they teach and what Unity teaches, and nothing that's inconsistent with the stories that I have, the belief that I have. And so I really enjoy it because there's a clarity about it. Abraham says it's like this: you create your own reality, like it or not, because you don't get what you want. You get what you think about. And most of us don't always spend all our time thinking about what we want. We think more about what we don't want. Or we think about what we want and the lack of it. The lack of it. And so you get more lack of it because that's what you're thinking about. So, whatever we talk about, whatever we think about, we tell stories about. We just keep telling stories. If something happens, how many of us go and tell our friends what happened? If it's good, we get excited and we tell that story. If it's something that's unwanted, we run and we tell that story to as many people who will listen. And the thing is, if your story isn't making you happy, if you don't feel joyful in the telling of it, you have the power to tell a different story. Even if the different story that you want to tell doesn't appear to be true in the moment, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. Because things can happen to you and things will happen through you. So as you tell a story that you want to tell, that begins to manifest. That begins to be the creation power, the creating power behind your experience. And that's hard to grasp sometimes. It's complicated and yet oh so simple. And so I believe that the first step toward a more joyful life of love and freedom is coming to the awareness that what we call truth, because we all have our own stories, right? So what's true? What we call truth is only a reflection of our current state of awareness. It's only a reflection of the beliefs that we have, which is thoughts that we've kept thinking, ideas that we've held on to, stories we've told. That's our truth. And so it can change. we can allow what we consider to be truth to change. I certainly don't believe the same things now that I believed when I was 16 or 18 years old. Do any of you have? If you have the same beliefs, you wouldn't be in this room. You probably just wouldn't even be here. We've changed. There's that process of human evolution of consciousness. So the first thing to do is to say, my truth changes. My story can change, and I can change what's true for me. Many stories do have a basis in truth. There may be some kernel of truth in them. But have you noticed that truth changes from culture to culture, from religion to religion, from person to person, and in place and time? My truth's not what it was. So what we call truth determines our vibration. What we call truth in this moment determines what we create in our lives, because our truth is what we're thinking. We think it, we believe it, we don't question it. It just goes on and on like that. So, our manifestation, what we see in the world around us, is always a perfect match to what it is that we're believing and holding in mind. It's always a perfect match. And you can tell any story that you want. That's part of that power of imagination that Charles Fillmore used to talk about. You can use your imagination and you can tell any story that you want. So, that's the story I'm telling. That's the story. I'm going to stick with Abraham Hicks and Charles Fillmore. I like those stories. Those stories work for me. The author, Patrick Rothfuss, wrote, "It's like everyone tells a story about themselves inside their own head. Always, all the time. That story makes you what you are. We build ourselves out of that story." Myrtle Fillmore, co-founder of Unity. You've probably all heard this story. If you haven't, I'm not going to go through the story, but I will say that she was very, very ill. The doctors told her she was going to die. And she, through the power of changing her thinking and affirmative prayer, healed herself completely and lived to be 80, I don't remember how many, 3? She lived to be even older than me. She did. Do you suppose that she healed herself by telling the story of how sick she was? Or do you think maybe she healed herself by telling the story of how she healed herself? She told the story of the process of her healing over and again. That's what she focused on. That's where she placed her mind, and that's what was created in her life. Wow, that's pretty powerful. And there are all the stories that we have out there. And I've heard so many stories of people who've absolutely healed from having MS and being totally bedridden and paralyzed to a full recovery. Two people I know told that story. It was their story, it was their truth, and it was obvious to everyone around them that it was true. Those stories are powerful. Telling the story of illness continues to recreate illness. Telling the story of wholeness creates wholeness, because we don't ever stop creating. We're creating every moment. Every moment there's a creation going on. It's just that we don't see things changing most of the time because we're telling the same story. And so it keeps recreating itself day by day, moment by moment. We're in a continuous process of creation. Telling the story of illness is telling it from a human, fearful place. It's telling from a low vibration. Everything is energy, everything has vibration. And when we're ill and we're sick and we're afraid, we're in a lower place of energy. When we tell the story from the perspective of, I know my wholeness, even though right now I appear to be ill, I know my wholeness, and I know that every part of me is part of God, and I know that there's the healing intelligence of God in every cell of my body. So it doesn't matter what it looks like right now, because this is a process and I'm moving through it. When we tell the story from that place, it's a higher vibration. We're lifting ourselves up. We're getting closer to the truth that God knows, that your inner being, sacred self, source, whatever name you have for God, that knows. And that becomes manifest reality. See the power of that? When we go to a higher place in consciousness, we can see life through the eyes of Source, through the eyes of God. And we can tell the story from that perspective. Last week I talked a little bit about being in the valley and being on the mountaintop. When we look at life from the mountaintop, it's an entirely different view. And we tell a different story, we use different words. And what we see in our lives then changes. It has to. It's law, it's spiritual law, it's physics, it's quantum physics. This is important. This is really important because the stories we tell don't just reflect what has happened in our life. That's past, that's done. Our stories create our lives in the moment, in this now moment. On a quantum level, we know that when we believe something and we tell a story, what it does is it collapses down all the other possibilities. Everything is possible, but when we set our mind on something, every other possibility collapses down, and only the one that we are talking about, thinking and holding on to, shows up in our lives. So it collapses down all the possibilities. When we tell a story over and over again, are we talking about what excites us, what's happening, what's good, or are we talking about all of the pain and the drain and all of that? Now we can talk about the negative things that happen to us from a positive perspective. We can tell, it's not bad to tell our stories. It's good to tell our stories. But like Myrtle Fillmore, you don't tell it from a place of fear and from a place of, this is, life sucks and then you die. You tell it from a place of, I'm overcoming. I'm overcoming and I have all the tools I need to do it. This is amazing. I can move through this experience. And then you get to feel your power. You get to feel what God knows to be true about you. You get to feel that about yourself. What does God know to be true? God's story is that you are whole, you are complete, you are a part of God, you are love, you are light, you've never done anything wrong, you could never do anything wrong. You are amazing. You're a brave pioneer out here on the frontier of human existence, and you're helping to perpetuate the creation of the universe. Good job. Good job. No matter what the story looks like, good job. Because we are eternal beings, and so there is no lasting death. There's this transition from one shape and form to another. So good on you for being brave enough to come down here and help create the whole universe and keep it going. So don't take it all so seriously, lighten up, and just find as much joy as you can in life. To me, that's a good story. That's a better story than the one I was taught in a traditional church growing up. Wow. You are a powerful creator. You all are, we all are. And you can expand into a greater and greater understanding and freedom. You can gain freedom from judgment, freedom from fear, freedom from self-imposed limitations. You can gain freedom from all of that to become the highest potential expression of you that you can be and live the best life that you can live. So in the coming weeks, we're going to look at some of humankind's stories. I'm going to invite you to also explore your own personal story. What's the story that you've been told about your family? What's the story that you've been told about you? What's the story you tell yourself about you? Oh, I can't do that. Oh, I'm not this, or that happened to me and I've never been able to change it. What are the stories that we tell ourselves? It's important to know because all of that determines what manifests in your life. You get to create your life. Instead of life just happening to you, it happens through you. And it's important to know that. You'll see as you move through the process, everything actually happens for you. Everything. As painful as it can be, when you look at it from the highest perspective, that of God, you see that it happened for you. Some of the toughest times in my life were some of the greatest gifts. And some of the times when I got some clarity and some understanding that I would probably not have gotten any other way. And as you begin to consciously move in the direction of knowing your own power, the lessons are gentler. They're gentler and you bounce back faster. So, being a conscious creator means listening to your sacred self, getting to a higher place in consciousness, climbing up the mountain, and deciding that you want to be your maximum potential, the highest potential that you can be. That you want to recognize your spiritual nature, claim it, and stand in that truth. And if you want to know how you're doing, just look at your life around you. Is it working out the way you want? Are things flowing to you naturally and easily? When things that are soul-crushing happen, can you see it from a higher perspective? Things happen. Sometimes it does feel like life sucks. And we get to move through it. We get to move through it with the most grace and ease that we can. So, our lives perfectly reflect the energy in which we live. We create the energy through our thoughts. Hold on to thoughts long enough for them to start drawing more thoughts like them to them. And if you don't like what you're thinking, there's one thing that always works for me, and that is to turn around and focus on love instead. To stop the thoughts that I'm thinking that are really hurting me, that are really making me feel bad, focus on love instead. Find something that just lifts you up, or someone, think about love instead. And if it hurts you to think about that, find something else. Because if we can remember that Spirit is always right here with us, loving us, blessing us, growing us, always wants the highest and the best for us, that will lift us up out of some of the darkest places in our lives. We get to, instead of thinking from the valley of the shadow, think from the mountaintop. From our fearful lower vibration, move up into unconditional love. That means love that is love no matter what. No matter what. Neither viewpoint is wrong. It's not wrong to be fearful. It's not wrong to fall in those places. And it's not wrong to think that you are one with God. It simply leads to a different life experience. So tell the story that you want to tell. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, the consciousness that is you decided to come to planet Earth and live a few lives and have some fun. And some of us have forgotten that. And so it's time to tell a different story. The good guys are going to win. They always do, because we're all good guys. We're just in different states of remembering our goodness. When we remember our goodness, our lives change. Give yourself that gift. Remember your goodness. Tell that story and go forward from there. If you want to make changes in your life, you don't do it in the past. You don't do it in the future. You do it right now. So right now, we're going to affirm the stories I tell have power. So today, I'm telling a new story. The stories I tell have power. So today, I'm telling a new story. Let's say that together. The stories I tell have power. So today, I'm telling a new story. Do you need to hear it again? Yes, let's do it one more time. The stories I tell have power. So today, I'm telling a new story. Yes, and so it is, and so we let it be. Thank you.